Stop eating so much spicy food.
All righty, we are live. Hello, and welcome everybody. We do have a lot that we will be discussing on tonight's show, starting with election 2020. We will be talking about the census. As you all know, the census was cut short by a month. And we're going to talk about the continued protests that we've seen in Wisconsin, Portland, and much more. I do have two guests with me tonight, but one guest is running a little bit behind. And the guest that I have with me right now is Mr. David Somerfleck. He is a digital marketing specialist and startup consultant with over 20 years experience. He is also trained in political campaign consulting by the White House Project, and he is an experienced mediator and project manager. Welcome to the show, Mr. Somerfleck.
Thank you so much for having me, OB. I really appreciate it.
And Miss Claudia Clark is supposed to be joining us. Hopefully she's able to tune in before the show is over. And my name is Obi, and this is the News with Obi, where we talk about all things politics, current affairs happening in our local community and around the world. All right, and we are back. Welcome back, everybody. So, Mr. Somerfleck, let's dive right into it. We have, like I mentioned earlier, we have a lot to talk about. Sure. But first, let's start about how a second Iowa judge has ruled in favor of President Trump's campaign and ordered a county to invalidate 50,000 absentee ballot requests. Yes. Now, voters have to risk their lives and probably have to go to the polls. Now, what is your take on this?
I mean, my take on it is I wasn't surprised that happened. I was more saddened and disappointed in that decision. Really, there's nothing new with that. I mean, it's in Trump's best interest to invalidate as many absentee ballots as he possibly can. He knows that. He may act like a fool, but he is not a fool, and he has people who are, very capable advising him and really trying to swing this election in his favor as quickly as possible. I mean, right now, Joe Biden is severely outraising Donald Trump, which I am very pleasantly surprised by as a progressive. Yeah. I think Joe Biden is raising something like $1 million a day now.
Oh, wow.
So he's raised more this month. He's raised more than Barack Obama did in 2008.
No way. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. They said that they literally can't count the money fast enough.
Wow.
So this was on Politico. So this is not my opinion. Yeah. So my take on that is that it's unfortunate. Every American, whether they are Republican or a Democrat or independent, should be entitled to their vote. That's what makes our election supposedly fair. So the fact that 50,000 absentee ballots would be openly invalidated is very, very unfortunate.
Yeah. And now that people have to, with COVID and everything, come November 3rd, people might have to go to the polls or actually find a way to get their votes counted. What advice do you have for people that still want to do absentee ballot or have no choice but to do an absentee ballot or actually mail-in ballot? What advice do you have for people?
Well, I'm one of them. I mean, I live in Florida. So I have great empathy for that. My advice for them is as soon as you get the ballot in the mail, take your time, read through the instructions, make sure that everything that you do is done very carefully and to the letter, because if your mail-in ballot, whether it's an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, if it can be invalidated and thrown out, it will be. You can rest assured of that. And again, I am biased because I am a progressive and I make no bones about that. But obviously, if 50,000 absentee ballots are being thrown out in Iowa, and you really shouldn't need to throw those out. I mean, Iowa is a pretty strong Republican state, so I don't really see the need to do that. But my recommendation is, as soon as you get your ballot, follow the instructions on the envelope to the letter. You might want to wear gloves with it if you're COVID paranoid like me, but I would fill that baby out and put it right back in the mail immediately and make sure that there's adequate postage on it. If you feel fairly comfortable and secure putting on your mask and going to a local ballot drop off location that is signified as one on election day, then certainly do that. But I would double check that information, because it's highly likely that some of these ballot drop-off locations and voting locations will change at the last minute.
Right. So pretty much if you can actually take it to the post office, and probably, because I know when I was at the post office a few days ago, now with social distancing, the line's a lot longer. And I asked one of the guys that work at a post office, I asked him what they plan on doing.
Do they know?
He knew. He said that they're going to have some people standing outside taking those ballots from people, but he also advised that people start bringing their ballots in a lot earlier.
Yeah,
so
that is definitely the case. I would, like I said, I recommend as soon as that ballot comes in the mail, follow those instructions very carefully. Make sure you sign and what you need to sign, that you date everything in perfect compliance with the stated instructions. If you mail that in, mail it in the day after or the day upon which you receive it, or the following morning. If you want to drop it off, make certain that drop-off location has not changed before you get in your car, because it's probable that they will change.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked polls before, and certainly locations did change. People who are volunteers may or may not show up. They may become ill. We don't know. So you want to plan for every contingency if at all possible. And certainly elections are extremely important. And in my humble opinion, this election rather is more important.
And as cliche as it might sound, this election is actually really important. One of the most important ones that we've had.
It is. I mean, I almost said that I think this is more important than the Obama-McCain election, because
I think so.
I think it is. I mean, at his heart, I don't think John McCain was an evil man. And I'm not saying that I think Donald Trump is evil. I don't think he is. I think that Donald Trump is a man who is a showman. I think he's a game show host. And that's just my personal opinion. If people disagree with me, that's certainly fine. That's their right to do so.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if Miss Clark can join us. I sending her the link one more time so she can join us. You have to make sure you are using Chrome. If you're not using Google Chrome for some reason, this platform might not let you in, Miss Clark. So check your email again, and I sent the link again. So, Mrs. Somerfleck, let's talk a little bit about what we've seen going on in Wisconsin. Jacob Blake.
Yes.
Jacob Blake, the black man that was shot by a white cop in Kenosha, led to a large rally. And on Saturday afternoon, Donald Trump planned to visit. Okay, here's Miss Clark. She's coming in. Donald Trump planned to visit. All right, she is here. Hi, how are you?
I am so sorry for the confusion. I'm in German school boot camp, and I've got some technology that is not working. So,
no worries. I'm glad you were still able to join us.
I am so sorry. It is 1 o'clock in the morning. I stayed up to do this. So
I know. Even with the time difference. Thank you so much.
I'm more than welcome to, and I'm very excited to be here. So,
Okay, good, good, good. So glad you can join us. So for those just tuning in, this is the News with OB. I had introduced Mr. David Somerfleck earlier, and Miss Claudia Clark is joining us from Germany. And she currently is serving as a national Get Out the Vote coordinator for Democrats abroad in Germany. And she has worked on political and social justice campaigns, including women's reproductive health issues and LGBTQ rights. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this. This is such an important topic.
Yeah. And we decided to get it going before you joined in. And me and myself and Mr. Somerfleck were talking about Iowa and how the judge had ruled in favor of President Trump's campaign and ordered a county to invalidate 50,000 absentee ballot requests. Now, voters will have to submit a blank request for absentee ballots or vote in person, despite COVID. What is your take on that?
That, I think, is just another form of voter suppression. I think that people are registered to vote and they should be allowed to register. They should not have to be required to re-register to vote. And I think that it's just a way of the Republicans trying to keep people from voting because they're afraid that they're not going to be able to win fairly otherwise.
Well, Trump has already said that. Yeah, Trump has already said that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
He has publicly said that.
Yeah. And we saw what happened with Postmaster General. They had a hearing and all that. We saw how that happened. And of course, the post mailboxes that were removed, he said they weren't taking those back. So
no. Yeah. And I've heard, even though, despite the fact that they promised that they would not do it anymore, I heard that in Minneapolis that they have recently taken a mailbox down as well. So I don't know if that, I haven't verified that, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to play fair. They're not going to replace the mailboxes and they're not going to replace the sorting machines. So, so even if they don't stop anymore and keep all the mailboxes intact, I'm afraid the damage has already been done.
Yeah. Yeah, and with you being coordinating the Get Out the Vote in Germany, how is that going in terms of getting people to send in their absentee ballots and all that? How is that going?
That actually isn't so bad. The good news for us is for those of us that live overseas, by law, they have to get us our ballots 45 days before the election. So the absolute latest is the middle of September. And then if they don't by then I encourage people to get on the phone and call your county clerk's office and demand that ballot. And luckily I'm registered to vote in California. So luckily California's really good about it. And I can actually I can either email or fax my ballot in. So I'm fortunate. There are some states that require it actually have to be mailed in. And so I would encourage if you do not receive your ballot on the 45th day before the election, I would contact your county clerk's office and demand that they send it to you.
So for you guys that live abroad, when do you mail it back to the States immediately, right?
Yeah, well, it depends. I can email or because it varies by state, but and California allows us to fax in our email for our ballot or mail it.
Okay.
Whatever's easiest for us. So we have a printer, nobody uses fax machines anymore, but our printer is attached to a fax machine. So my husband and I just faxed it in. And we do it the day that the ballot comes. And I'm encouraging everyone, as soon as your ballot arrives, just don't even waste any time. Don't sit on it. Decide who you're going to vote for ahead of time and just get it in. Don't wait to do it because there's no guarantee that it's going to get there in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that information, especially for those that live outside the United States. And I know everybody has been following the recent uprisings that we've seen here in the US. And most recently, we saw Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times. in Wisconsin. And this really started up a riot. And right after that, 2 days later, we saw Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old, that went to that same protest and killed 2 people, injuring 1 person. Now, despite all that, Trump still planned. He went to visit, I believe, on Saturday. What are your thoughts on the incident and how Trump is handling all of this?
Well, for myself, I have to admit I expected him to go. I don't really see how he could have resisted going, because it's really a clarion call to his base core of supporters. He recognized, look, here's an African-American man who was shot in the back 7 times just trying to get into his car. We don't know if he was reaching for a weapon. And even if he was, he would still have to physically do a complete 360 and turn around. There's no way, even if he had a gun in there, that he could have reached it and done anything to anyone. And I don't know whatever happened with simply tackling someone. I think 1 shot in the leg would have disabled him anyway, or even a taser. I don't know whatever happened to those things. Honestly, I don't know how the police who did that, or the officer who did that, could really look at himself in the mirror and feel that that was justifiable in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was a cowardly, fear-based act. So for Trump to go there, I don't think he mentioned Jacob Blake 1 time.
He didn't. And before he went, he actually said that Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old that went and did the shootings, that he was attacked. That's why he shot. So he's pretty much supporting the 17-year-old kid. And they raised money for him for his case, for his, when he gets to get for a hearing.
Right. And if you look at the specifics of that case, I may be mistaken. And if I am, please correct me. But from what I've seen, I believe that young man committed the murders, walked down the middle of the street with his hands up. From what I could see in the video, it looked like that.
Still with the rifle.
With the rifle, hands up in the air, and the police passed him right by and said, no, we're not interested. Even though there were some protesters saying, he shot people, please look at him. The police did nothing because it really wasn't an important thing for them. The next day, I believe he was served.
Yeah. So he went home.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. After that, he went home.
Sure.
Yeah. And Ms. Clark, you want to add to that?
Let me just say, I don't think I have been so disgusted in my life. It's just, enough is enough. And I remember I watched the press conference with his family, and I forced myself to watch those press conferences because it's uncomfortable as it is for me to sit there and listen to just what the family is going through. I figure it's good for me. If I'm uncomfortable listening to it, I can't imagine what it must be like to live through that. And it's how many times are we going to replay the same situation over and over and over again? And there's no remorse. There was absolutely no need to shoot him 7 times in the back. I don't even think there's any reason for 1 time. And I'm convinced that if this person had been white, it would not have happened. And I don't think, I knew Trump was going to go because he needs to instigate trouble. And despite everybody asking him not to go, I knew he was going to, and I feared that he was going to make the situation worse. And I was disgusted that that 17-year-old Kyle was allowed to go home. And as far as it's my understanding that his mother actually
dropped him off.
And as far as I have a social work background in child welfare for a little while. If I firmly believe that the mother should be charged as well as an accomplice, because what in the heck is the 17-year-old doing with that kind of rifle? And he didn't get there by himself, his mother. And that just infuriates me. And I think what disgusts me more is I understand that the Christian right groups are raising money for this kid's defense fund.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And can you imagine, just flip that script for a minute. Imagine that that young man, I don't even want to say his name. Imagine that young person was an African-American youth walking down the middle of the street, carrying a long shotgun, shooting. How many people did he shoot? Two, I believe. Two people. So he shot two people, and then he walks right down the middle of the street with his hands up, and people ignore it. The police
wouldn't have
ignore
gone far if it was an African American. That's the honest.
Yeah, he would have stepped maybe 1 inch and probably gotten 20 bullets in his head.
Yeah.
Certainly based on what happened to poor Jacob Blake, who's just trying, I saw the video, just trying to get into his car. Just saying, look, I don't want any part of this. I'm getting in my car.
And his kids were in the car when that happened. Kids,
now they're traumatized. Traumatized forever.
Yeah, nice. And when I watched that video, or I watched the press conference, and they were from his family, and they were talking about all the injuries he sustained. I literally, I cried. I really, really cried.
He's paralyzed from the waist down. So
it's a miracle he's alive.
No, and not to mention the
all I
kidney
can.
problem. Yeah, enough is enough. It's just, it's beyond sickening.
Yeah, I really hope that he can hire some representation like Benjamin Crump or someone to represent him at the very least.
Yeah. So segueing a little bit into what we've been seeing in Portland, and it's been 3 months now since the murder of George Floyd, and we've seen, despite having a pandemic, we've seen a lot of youth go out there to protest all over the world. How important is it that the media is cognizant about how they cover these protesters? Because most of these protesters, most of the protesters are being called thugs. I've gone out to protest a few times. I'm not a thug, So how important is it that the media is cognizant about the words that they use to describe what's going on out there?
Well, I don't. Claudia, do you have a view on that?
Sure.
I certainly do, but I want to make sure.
Too. I think it's disgraceful. There are loiters out there, and there are people that are, or looters. There are people that are destroying property, et cetera, et cetera. But those people are more often than not protesting the violence against African Americans. They're just protesting just for the sake of destroying things, and they're a small minority. And to call every single person that was out there practicing their First Amendment right for social justice a thug in a derogatory way it's disgusting. And you're, number one, it's uncalled for, but number two, you're stereotyping every single person that is out there. And I really think that the media needs to get on the same page and just call these people protesters.
Right.
And then for the people that are, don't pay as much, they're paying far too much attention to the people that are causing the problems. And I think that's giving them attention. So I think the media just needs to.
And like you said, there's only a small group of people that really come to these protests to actually cause trouble. Like when I was at a protest here in New York not too long ago, we saw a young lady spray painting a police car. And we started yelling at her, and she ran. And we told the police she ran that way, go get her, because we don't want you to think everybody's out here doing the same thing, So go ahead, Mr. Somerfleck.
Well, I was just going to say too, I think it's really important that we make a distinction between, the words that we use. What is a thug? Let's define that word and know what is being used by the media, call it what it is. What is a thug? A thug is someone who resorts to violence unnecessarily. A peaceful protester is not a thug because they're not resorting to violence. A peaceful protester is a peaceful protester. So when right-wing media, or for that matter, mainstream media, refers to peaceful protesters as thugs, what they're doing is they're basically saying, look, we are behind this White House administration. We want to curry favor with that administration. I mean, just like we used to rely on the CDC for objective medical information now. And right now, if you look at what the CDC says, it's bedlam. A thug is someone who resorts to violence unnecessarily. A peaceful protester is a peaceful protester, which is a right protected under the United States Constitution. So you should certainly have every right to do that. You're not inhibiting anyone from doing what they want to do.
Right.
And that's a very important distinction to make. If I want to wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt and go protest downtown where I live, I should have the right to do that. And I'm no more a thug than any other person wishing to protest, or for that matter, what if they want to wave a Confederate flag and say, we adore Donald Trump. We think he is the second coming of Christ. We worship him. They are free to go.
Right.
And
that's within their rights to do that, So.
Right. So to call them a thug, I think if they're peaceful protesters, you're obviously tainting that.
Right.
You're shading that language, and people need to be aware of that.
Yeah. And we have people tuning in, people watching. Thank you for those that are going to be Fidelia. She's one of my friends.
Fidelia Nami. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you got that right. So
Okay.
Fidelia, let us know if you got your last name right.
There's a beautiful family in that photo.
And thank you, Fidelia. She's always been supportive. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for everybody else on YouTube, which I can see. And if you're listening to this on the podcast later, thank you as well. So, Miss Claudia, we again thank you for tuning in. I know it's late where you are. So, being that you live in Germany and you wrote the book about the relationship between President Obama and German Chancellor Merkel, my partner, my friend, a few days ago, Angela Merkel did warn that COVID-19 pandemic is likely to get worse in the coming months in Germany. Now, has the pandemic become political in Germany like it has here?
Not to the same extent. For the most part, it has not been people understand how important it is, and they maintain social distancing, and they wear masks. We were one of the first countries we shut down completely in April. And the day when they started to reopen, the government sent out masks to us, to every household. So you really didn't have an excuse not to wear a mask.
Like
And
N95 mask?
we got, well, no, just the paper type of masks that you can get, for $3. But we received.
That's a great gesture. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you had no excuse for not wearing masks. And it depended upon what state you were living in Germany. And the state I live in, which is Bavaria, it was from the get-go, it was a 150-euro fine for your first offense for not wearing a mask. And the second offense was 300 euros. So they took it very, very seriously. There are some people that didn't like it. I don't think anybody likes wearing them. They're not comfortable, but they understood. And one thing that the pandemic has actually helped Merkel is that her popularity, because of how she handled the crisis, her popularity is about 80. It was recently about 82%. And a lot of it is because of how well she's handled it. Now, with that said, like everywhere, the United States does not have a patent on stupid and idiotic people. And there was a protest in Berlin over the weekend, and I think there were 35,000 people there that were the far right wing protesting, wearing masks and social distancing. And it's put the government in kind of a difficult situation because the German Constitution protects free speech and free assembly. And so they applied for a permit, and nothing in the Constitution says, yeah, you have free speech except in cases of pandemic. So they were allowed to protest, but things got out of control, and a few people tried to take control of the Bundestag, or the parliament, and they were arrested accordingly. But those are very, very, very few and far between. Nothing like in the United States. And in fact, when I talk to people here, they don't, they see what's going on in the United States because they are obsessed with what's going on in the United States over here. And people are amazed at how ignorant and how stupid and stubborn some Americans are being about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we have Athena Trenton is saying she wishes people took it seriously in Texas. I know.
I do too, Athena.
You live in Texas, Mrs.
No, I don't. I don't have anything against Texas. Okay, I live in Florida, but I have great empathy. I wish people did take it seriously, because guess what? If they did, the number of cases and the number of deaths would not continue to skyrocket. We are on schedule. I believe, according to Johns Hopkins, I believe we're on schedule to hit 200,000 fatalities pretty soon. I think we're around one. I haven't checked today, but I think we're around 180. So we're 180,000 deaths. Yeah. Now, I don't want to say how old I am because I'm sure I look like I'm 21 to everybody, but that's more death. Absolutely. That is more death than we ever had in World War I. It's more people than died during 9/11. And for anyone who thinks that that's the equivalent to the flu, you are fooling yourself. There's been no flu in recorded history that took out 180,000 people in one season. It ain't happening. Never. And if you want to look up some horrifying parallels, just look up the 1918 pandemic. Yeah. Everything that they did in 1918, they're doing today.
Yeah. And let's not forget, this is still the first wave.
Right.
Dr. Fauci has not been wrong yet. According to what he's saying, we're going to hit a second wave. So
I don't think there's been. I don't think there's been an end to the first wave.
Yeah, I remember.
I follow on Twitter. I follow Dr. Osterholm. I can't remember his first name. Dr. Osterholm. He has a podcast called the Osterholm Update, and he's a very, very sober guy, almost to the point of being humorless. But he probably doesn't have much to feel humorous about. Dr. Osterholm, and then Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who used to work with the FDA. So I follow those two gentlemen, and Osterholm said that it's basically one long fire, that, the people are basically they're wood for the fire right now. And right now, the number one thing to Donald Trump is he has got to win this election at all costs. And if that means more people die, what does he care? That's why he's having these events where he's encouraging people don't wear masks. He doesn't wear a mask, but then again, he's also far away from people physically. He has access to the greatest healthcare in the world. Right. He's probably tested, multiple times a day. Has said that he is.
Yeah. And you did say at the beginning of the RNC, he did mention that he took zinc and Z-Pak, and I don't know if that was him admitting that he had COVID, but I found that interesting. Go ahead, Miss Claudia.
Well, I was going to say, and one thing that was interesting about Chancellor Merkel is that they were very, very, strict initially about the mask requirements. And Merkel was called on the carpet because she wasn't wearing a mask. And they were, the press and the media kind of said, look, you're being a little hypocritical, don't you think? And she tried kind of explaining, well, I'm saying the proper social distancing kind of thing. And the media wasn't buying it. And the next day she was wearing a mask, and she's been doing so ever since then. So, things she hasn't been perfect, and things have certainly not been perfect in Germany. But she's, the difference between having a government run from a talk show, a reality TV show failure, and a quantum physicist speaks volumes. I just looked right before I came on. I looked at the rate of infection in Germany, and it was 22,000, I believe. So not horribly bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fidelia is saying, could we speak on the fact that some of these COVID-19 cases are also being exaggerated and being misrepresented?
Fidelia,
go ahead, Mr. Somerfleck.
I would just ask Fidelia, what do you mean?
Yeah.
First of all, the CV-19, I haven't seen that term, but here's my feeling on that, Fidelia, and I want to speak to this directly. Obviously, I'm not speaking to you. I don't know what you mean. I am personally of the mind that the SARS-2 COVID-19 pandemic, which basically COVID-19 is similar to SARS. So that's why it's called that. And it's called COVID-19 because it was discovered in 2019. I'm of the mind that it is real, it's legitimate, it's wiping out a lot of people, it's making otherwise very healthy, physically fit people extremely ill, or if not permanently disabled. If you watch The Bachelor, you might remember the handsome young man, Colton Underwood, who was a former NFL player.
Yeah,
and he was in his 20s, okay? Very physically fit young man. He got COVID-19, and he said on Twitter that he couldn't make it to the bathroom without stopping and getting some air. He said that it was the worst he had ever experienced in his life. Now, this is a young man, in his 20s, very, very physically fit, someone that, most ladies would go bananas over. And he's telling you, I got it and I couldn't go to the bathroom. So, and there's young children who are in their single digits. I read about a 7-year-old girl who was otherwise perfectly healthy who passed away from it. So it's a serious epidemic. When you say that people are skewing it, I don't really know what you mean or how they're skewing it.
I don't think the numbers are false. I live in New York, and
I think they're underestimated, if anything.
If anything, in March and April in New York was really dark because it's either you knew somebody that had COVID, you knew somebody that died of COVID, or you knew somebody in the hospital with COVID. So the numbers are not exaggerated. I don't know why anyone would think that. And like Mr. Somerfleck said, it's actually getting healthy people. I mean, Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, got COVID last week. So
and how is he? How's he doing?
As of last week, they said he was doing okay. But for him to have that kind of stamina and still get COVID, who knows?
Can I say something real quick about that?
Yeah,
please.
Assuming that the numbers are exaggerated, which I don't necessarily believe, I tend to agree that they are underestimated. But the fact, all they're really asking us to do is to wear a mask when we go out and to keep a proper social distance. As far as I'm concerned, as a community-based culture, that's the least we can do to ensure that our surroundings, our people, our friends, our coworkers are healthy. If there's even a remote chance that I have contracted it, which I don't think I have, but if there's a slight chance, I am willing, it's a price I am willing to pay to wear a mask and to stay 6 feet from the person next to me so that I can go about my daily business. I don't think they're asking too much of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and Athena is saying in the U.S., testing has been so poor and inaccessible. If anything, cases are underestimated.
I'd like to speak to that from just a strictly local perspective, if I may, very briefly. I live in Southwest Florida, and so I only know, what I see locally and what I see online. And I can tell you, I remember Trump saying that there would be testing at local Walmarts and CVS pharmacies. I can tell you where I live, there are several Walmarts and quite a number of CVSs. There's no testing outside, not anywhere. Period. The parking lots are huge and they're empty. Okay. There's no testing being done in any outdoor areas that I have physically seen at any Walmart or CVS. And I'd also want to say that the CEO of the local hospitals where I live in Lee County, Florida, the CEO of the hospitals has said, we have more cases than we can handle. We're building more IC units to accommodate the continuing rise in cases. And certainly in the state of Florida, DeSantis has publicly done what he could to put his thumb on the testing, firing the woman he hired to monitor the number of cases. And Trump himself has said, if we do less testing, there will be less cases.
Right.
Right. So if you stop testing, then the cases will magically disappear because you won't know it. It's like saying you won't see the man with the knife behind you if you don't turn around.
Or I won't get pregnant if I don't take a pregnancy test.
Right.
You won't know what it is. Something will come out of you, but you won't know. What is that? How did that thing get there?
Right. The CDC, as of last week, they changed the requirements. They said that if you are around somebody that either had COVID, that you shouldn't really worry or something about that. Yes. So I don't think that was a good idea, but. And
the next day they reversed it.
Yeah.
They reversed it. I did not know that.
The next day.
Yeah, they wanted that.
There's an old saying that they used to express when I was a boy that you can't talk right and walk left. The problem right now with the CDC is that they're trying to accommodate the president or the current president in order to gain funding that they require. So how can they accommodate the current administration and get the funding that they need while also trying to tell the truth? So they're walking that tightrope, and that's why people look at the CDC and wonder. It seems like they're usually a month to 2 months behind.
Yeah. Fidelia, we'll click on the link later, but she's saying again, it appears to be a serious pandemic, but some of us have been reading several sources here as one of many.
I'd have to look at that link. Fidelia, I'd have to look at that link. I don't know if I could click on it right now.
Yeah, we can't click on it right now, but we'll definitely take a look at it. And
can I just say one more thing to Fidelia very briefly? Yeah. Fidelia, for accurate information about what is going on with COVID-19, and for anybody else listening who is interested, what I would ask you is to please have a variety of objective sources, as objective as you can find within this current political climate, where it's so polarizing. It's literally Caucasian against African American. It's Republican against Democrat. It's progressive versus those who want things to be the way they were back when George Wallace was president. So I would say to you, please consider looking at more than one source. And I'm not saying you're not doing that, Fidelia, but just go to news.google.com and type in COVID-19 and look for news from a multitude of sources. So one of the things I do as a webhead is I go to refdesk.com, refdesk.com. And I learned about that from Colin Powell, and he said in an interview that that's his homepage. So I go to Refdesk in the morning and I go through the links and I check the headlines for every one of the major news sources every day. And I look at the headlines, I look at that information to see what's really going on. And I also encourage people to look at international news, look at German news, look at the news from
BBC.
The CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Look at the news from other countries that you can find on YouTube. What did they say about what's happening within the U.S.? Because you can't really trust someone who has ulterior motives to tell you what's really going on. And right now, the CDC needs funding. The WHO needs funding. They need it.
Right.
Fauci, whether you like Fauci or don't, I feel 50-50. He still works for his boss.
Right.
He wants to keep his job. He's got to be very careful what he says. So I would encourage people to go to Ref Desk and also read all the headlines from all the major news sources within the U.S. and also look at the news headlines from Al Jazeera, from Canada, and 2 or 3 other countries. Certainly the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, Spain, those countries are not faking it when it comes to COVID.
Yeah. Thank you.
They're being devastated by it.
Well, and not only that, but there are parts of Europe that have a rise again. For example, Spain and parts of France. And the German government is discouraging people from going to those 2 countries. And that the lack of ability to travel between those countries is devastating to the European economies. So they're not going to make that stuff up. They're going to be very, very careful before they say, do not go to Spain or do not go to Paris, because Paris is one of the cities they don't want us to go to right now.
Right. And that's a really, really important point. And the thing is also, I would add as well, is that the economy right now in the United States is either on equal par with the Great Depression of the 1930s or worse, depending on which economist you listen to. And what that means is that the economy in the U.S. and how it's impacting the global economy is being devastated right now. And that doesn't happen from hoaxes or conspiracies. That happens from legitimately people are dropping and getting very, very seriously ill. And quite a number of people are getting COVID. Some people are asymptomatic and feel fine. Other people get it and they feel like, oh, well, it's just a bad run of the flu. Other people get it, they recover and can't behave in the way that they were before. So these are called long haulers. So if you actually go to news.google.com and type in long haulers, HAULERS, you will see that there's a growing number of people who are saying, we had COVID when it first began. We're still not fully recovered. We can't breathe. We've got heart palpitations. They're breathing issues. They're little children with bizarre inflammations. So I recommend and really request that people look at multiple news sources. If you love Fox News, that's great. But look at other sources as well, not just right-wing media, to get a more balanced viewpoint. And I'm not saying that is you, Fidelia. I'm saying people in general, okay? So don't get mad at me.
I'm going to read Athena's question, and then we can move on to the next topic, because I know we can talk about COVID the whole show, quite honestly. So Athena's saying, there is an argument that deaths are overestimated because hospitals get more federal money for COVID deaths. So hospitals are manipulating death certificates. The misunderstanding is that dying from COVID is usually death from a complication. So COVID is listed as a contributing factor, but COVID is a complication. And okay, so you want to take that question, Mr. Somerfleck? You want to take that?
Well, as I said, I can only speak from the perspective of looking at the news on a daily basis and following Dr. Osterholm and the other gentleman on Twitter on a daily basis as well. Here's the thing about that. First of all, there are many, many cases of people dying right now who are dying as a result of COVID-19 or from a heart attack or other issues related to COVID-19 who aren't being counted directly as a COVID fatality, because many states are changing how they define a COVID-19 fatality or demise. So I would say if that is happening, and I don't know for sure that it is, I really wouldn't worry about it. I would still take COVID very seriously. And B, if that is happening, it's not really balancing out the number of deaths. In other words, there's still people who are passing away and dying as a result of complications due to COVID-19, which is a legitimate COVID-19 death. So, I'm not sure how you feel about that, Claudia, or how closely you follow that.
I tend to agree. I think whether it's a main cause or a secondary cause, I think it needs to be identified, and the more funding the more problems that it causes, hopefully there'll be more funding available to treat the secondary or the other causes, and then we can find a way to get a legitimate vaccine. I don't trust anything that Trump is pushing, but and I've said a million times, I'm glad I'm on this side of the Atlantic right now.
Yeah. I don't blame you. And Athena too, I would say again, please, look up Dr. Osterholm, look up the other gentleman I mentioned, and look up other sources as well to get a more balanced viewpoint of this perspective, because I worry that adhering to that information may be something that is counterproductive and may be biased from a right-wing group.
And you did, Kareem was asking about the link. Kareem, the link is up on the screen. He mentioned news.google.com to get a more vast search of news happening, not just in the US, but in other countries as well. Kareem is saying that also people that haven't experienced what it felt with COVID should not be opinionated. Just be thankful you didn't get it. He's still not 100%. And Kareem is my personal trainer. When I tell you this man is strong.
I wish Kareem could call in, because I'd really like to know what Kareem experienced.
Yeah.
And what happened to him very specifically, what his symptoms were, what he experienced, and how he's feeling now, and how recent that was. Because my big concern would be about lingering, ongoing symptoms that might not go away. That would be a concern of mine, because in the picture, I can't see the photograph 100% blown up. Yeah. But it looks like Kareem is doing some kind of physical activity or some kind of sport. So I would ask, how are you feeling now? How long has that been?
He had it right before we really knew what COVID was about. So I believe Kareem was sick beginning of March. He was down for 2 weeks, and for him to be that down was scary. He said he doesn't have he said it was in March, no lung capacity. So he was sick in March, and really sick. So
NP lung. I'm guessing, Kareem, you mean no lung capacity?
Yeah, he typed the right one. He typed
lung. Yeah, so no lung capacity. That's pretty scary if you have asthma, Kareem. And that's what I would say to other viewers and listeners. If you have asthma, if you're slightly overweight, if you're a little bit older, if you're a smoker, God help you if you like to, drink whiskey and smoke a cigar and you get this. I don't know how it would impact you if you're in your 50s or 60s and you're slightly overweight or not, what is that going to do to you? How are you going to feel later on? And I would also say, again, go to news.google.com, type in long haulers.
Yeah.
Learn about what they're going through and how they're trying to petition the WHO and asking them to please take what they're going through seriously. We don't know.
Yeah. And Kareem is saying he was down for 6 weeks. I was thinking too. So it was a lot longer.
Pretty long time. That's a pretty long time to be incapacitated. Were you flat on your back, Kareem?
He was. He was actually out. He couldn't get out the house.
Well, that's pretty serious. That's pretty serious.
Yeah.
Well, we still don't know the long term is what's going to happen, 6 months, a year, 2 years, none of that. And there's speculation that there's going to be some other problems, reoccurring problems that we just won't know about yet.
And he's only 47. So, yeah, I can't see the picture that clearly, Kareem. So I wish I had a better picture of you. I can't really tell, how fit you are, how young you are, but you say you're 47. So I'm sure you're a very young, very physically fit guy. So I hope you're feeling better and, 100% recovered.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. Thank you, everybody, for your input on this particular COVID. We're going to be talking about this for a very long time. So thank you for your input on that. So Mr. Somerfleck, this question was specifically for you, but Ms. Claudia, please feel free to chime in. In the last 2 weeks, we watched the DNC and the RNC go strictly virtual due to the pandemic. Now, based on your experience in political campaign and marketing, how well do you think each party did with getting their message across? Is this whole virtual thing working? Where do they need improvements?
Well, there were definitely some glitches, which are not unexpected. With the DNC, there were some cheesy moments in it for me personally that I felt were a little bit corny, but I still appreciated it. And let me see. I'm sorry, Kareem. I'm seeing your comment, and I feel I feel really bad for you. Yeah, but thank you for clarifying so other people could see that this is not a conspiracy. It's not a hoax. It ain't the flu. So please take it seriously. Even if you think that you're tough as nails and it won't impact you, put on a mask and try to care about other people. It's your patriotic duty, as Joe Biden said. And, as far as the DNC and the RNC goes, look, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't as slick as I would have hoped, but I felt that everybody did a good job. Yeah. And I felt that Biden did a very good job at the end. I think he articulated his stance very well. And I think Kamala Harris did very well also. And I'd like to say also, as a progressive person, as someone who is I'm a fellow of the Center for Progressive Leadership. And I also was active in about 6 progressive campaigns. So I just want to say for progressives out there, look, Joe Biden is not JFK. He's not John Kennedy. Yeah. That's a given. He might not be Barack Obama. Okay. But right now, there's more at stake now than ever before in our lifetime, okay? We have a raging pandemic, a narcissist in the White House. We have an economy that is literally on the rocks, okay? We have an education system that's on the rocks. So if you look at Joe Biden and say, well, look, do I really need another 70-year-old white man? Maybe you don't. But what you do need is a change. You need a 180 right now because what we have isn't working. Yeah. And if you look at, I hate to use the words of Ronald Reagan, but to use the words of Ronald Reagan, are you better off now than you were 4 years before? Yeah. The answer is no, we're not. The economy is in the dumper. 180,000 people dead, and there's going to be more tomorrow morning, okay? Yeah. Biden might not be perfect, and he's going to have these gaffes, like they say, because he's not a young guy. He's in his 70s. He's doing the best he can. Yeah. But at least he had enough wherewithal to pick Kamala Harris and to try to say, look, African Americans in America, I care about you. I care about what you're feeling. I'm trying to address him as the best he can at his age. He's doing the best he can. Yeah. So get out there and vote. If you got $5, go to joebiden.com, give the man your $5 so he can keep doing what he's doing and try to turn this ship around. I'm not under any delusion that the man is perfect, But I do believe that he would be a direct 180 from what we have now, and we desperately need that. So I just want to tie up what you asked me, OB. Sorry to go off on a tangent.
No problem.
Okay. I felt that the DNC was okay. I felt technically it could have been a little bit better. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more from some people, but I think it went off as well as it could have been, considering the RNC. I have to be honest, I didn't watch every single minute of it because I had to get oxygen. I felt like it spoke to the base of who that base is right now for the RNC. It does make me feel a little bit better to see that there are Republicans and more Republicans coming out in support of Joe Biden. So you have the Lincoln Project, which is a group of Republicans in support of Joe Biden who have said, look, even if you're Republican, we can't take any more of this. We need someone who can think clearly and tell the truth and articulate common sense, logical reason. So you have the Lincoln Project. You have another group of Bush supporters and Bush campaign professionals who worked in the Bush administration who have come out. Colin Powell, lifelong Republican, has come out in support of Joe Biden. So I would really, really ask people, look, the man is not perfect. He's not JFK, but he's the best we have right now. And he's a complete 180 from what we do have right now. Yeah. So if you want some,
up to us to hold them accountable once they, get there.
Yes. And if you look at what Kareem said, if you look at the man's life record as well, hey, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm not, the greatest guy in the world, but I've had one wife. Okay. And how many wives has Donald Trump had now, who says that he is born again, that he's this great Christian role model who the religious right adores and worships? How many wives has he had? How many bankruptcies? If he's a brilliant businessman, as so many Republicans think, how many bankruptcies has this guy had? Trump Ice, Trump Suits. I mean, how many Trump University? Trump University was a total scam and disaster. Come on. I mean, nobody looks at Trump University and says this was a real university. He's a gangster. He's a grifter. That's what he does. It's what he's always done. And everybody knows that. You either like that and think that's good, or you say, you know what, maybe it was funny at first, but enough is enough. It's getting serious now.
Ms. Claudia, did you watch the DNC and the RNC?
Me?
Yeah.
I watched it on the DNC on YouTube. I tried to stay up and watch it, but I just couldn't do it. And I will admit that a lot of it was a little corny, but I liked a lot of it. But I think my favorite part, besides obvious, the speaker, Speaker Obama, when Obama spoke and Michelle Obama spoke, my personal favorite thing was the state roll call vote. Normally that is really boring. The state, the delegates get up and say, I'm from Alabama and I'm giving X of my votes to Trump. This time they had different people from all over the country. They had African American women nurses from New York. They had a gay bed and breakfast owner from Maine, and I just loved that. It showed the diversity of the Democratic Party, and one of the reasons I consider myself to be a Democrat is because of their diversity and how and I'll be honest, I was only going to watch a couple minutes just to get kind of a feel for what happened, and my breakfast got cooled because I became so engrossed in it. The RNC I couldn't stomach. My TV wouldn't have survived. And nor would my blood pressure. So I watched the lowlights on. We have a VPN, so I get MSNBC here, and so I watched parts of it on what MSNBC played, and it was just rhetoric. It was speaking to the same people over and over again.
Yeah.
Fear,
And
fear
yeah,
mongering is the
yeah,
100%. If you want to understand what Trump is all about, it's about fear.
yeah. And
You know,
and if I could just say one thing, we're not just. I agree. Joe Biden is not a perfect candidate. To be perfectly honest, I didn't actually really want him to enter the race. I liked him a lot as a vice president, and I thought he was good, but I just thought it was time for someone different. But when
Yeah.
it became clear that he was going to get the nomination, I jumped on. And it's not just, people need to remember, we're not just voting for president. We're voting to get Betsy DeVos out of the Department of Education. Ruth Bader
Everything.
Ginsburg is not going to live forever. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people need to remember that when Trump goes, all of them go, and hopefully to prison, but at least we'll get them out of the White House. And people have to remember that no, Biden isn't perfect. And
Yeah.
no, there's some people that don't like Kamala Harris because she was a former prosecutor. Get over it. I mean, anyone, my dog is better than the moron in the White House.
Yeah.
And there is no, and I often think that Democrats are our own worst enemies. I swear sometimes people are pickier about who they're going to vote for president than they are about who they're going to marry. And you don't have to agree with this person on every single issue.
Yeah.
Sometimes responsible voting is voting for the lesser of two evils. And Biden there's a lot more right with him than there is wrong with him.
Exactly.
And there's a heck of a lot more right with him than the alternative. And people just need to remember that.
Yeah. So essentially, we really do need to get out and vote. That's the message out there that both of you are really talking about tonight. No matter what happens.
Ignore the polls. Vote anyway.
yeah, get out, vote. If you have an extra $5, donate it so Joe Biden can continue to put out the commercials that he needs to counteract all the fear mongering. And also, if you have extra spare few minutes, go to 2020census.gov and let your voice be heard there as well.
Yeah. So speaking of that, most of you already know that the Census Bureau did have to cut the census short by a month.
Yes.
To us, why this is a problem, please.
That's why I wanted to throw that out there because, the census is basically how the United States government appropriates funding for schools, medical facilities, highways, what else? Fire departments. So basically the infrastructure that we need right now. So it doesn't really, again, it doesn't surprise me that it was cut short. It's very disheartening that it was. But again, if you're somebody who wants to disenfranchise a certain group of people, then it makes sense that you would just say, hey, let's cut this census short. They don't need that money. Let's cut it. That doesn't, it's again, that's speaking to the base. So it's unfortunate, but you can go to 2020census.gov and I think you can still let your voice be heard and let that data be collected. Now, whether or not they're going to collect it or not and look at it is another story. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't take long to fill it out. It takes about probably, 2 or 3 minutes to fill it out. So please, it really helps with the funds that are allocated in your community. And I know that some people that are immigrants might be fearful of filling it out. And I understand that they shouldn't be, because when you don't fill it out, of course, that really stifles the community and the kind of funds that comes to various communities. And I understand that fear of, maybe being deported, but I believe that they cannot do that from you filling out a census form. Ms. Claudia, you want to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, didn't they finally, I know there was some discussion about them wanting citizenship as a question. Did they finally decide to get rid of that? So it shouldn't even, you shouldn't even have to answer that.
They were still debating on that. It's not on there.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Athena's saying, I live in rural Texas and we actually had a census worker come to our door last week. Wow.
I hope he was wearing a mask, Athena.
I hope so too. That's because I know one of the reasons the Census Bureau is saying they were cutting this short was because it's not safe to go door to door.
They could do it on. They could do it online. Just make commercials on YouTube. Given what's going on with COVID, I have to tell you, if someone came knocking on my door with taking a census, I don't know how I would answer that door. I probably wouldn't, or I'd go around the other side with a baseball bat right now. I don't know, but that's the problem. Do they look at this? Okay, Fidelia, I see your question. And I really can't answer that with total certainty. I would hope so. And I would encourage you to be politically active where you live and send an email to your local representative and ask, why not? Get involved. For the time that it takes to look at, some spam email or someone's comment, you could send an email to your local representative and say you're concerned about it. And you
wait,
ask.
Athena is saying that the census person wasn't wearing a mask.
I believe you.
Open the door.
Yeah, I hope you didn't open the door, Athena. I actually had that happen to me the other day with a FedEx driver. I was sitting outside of the house just trying to read a book, and the FedEx driver pulls up, is not wearing a mask on, and he wants to come hand me a package. And I just yelled at him and just said, look, have some sense. Leave the package at the mailbox, fool. I don't want your COVID. You may have it, you may not. But if you know what's good for you, leave the package at the mailbox, and I'm staying 30 feet away from you because I don't want it.
Yeah. And before we start wrapping up, first of all, thank you. This has been a very interactive show today. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions. And thank you to my guests for tuning in. And Miss Claudia, all the way from Germany. It has to be 2 a.m. where you are. So thank you.
2:11, yeah. I apologize again for the technical difficulties.
No worries. I'm glad you are still able to join us. So I want to talk about the projects that you are working on. How can our viewers support? Where can we find you? Please talk to us. How can we support?
Okay. Like you mentioned earlier, I have written a book about the relationship between President Obama and Chancellor Merkel. I am in the process of having it. I've got agents reviewing it now. What I need more than anything at this point in the game is I need publishers to look at it and realize that there's a need for it and that I have a following on social media. So more than anything, I need people to follow me on social media.
And I have your Instagram up. It's Claudia Clark Author 73. Is that right?
That is correct. Or you can LinkedIn, Claudia Clark, or my website. And if you go to my website and sign up for updates, you can download a free chapter. And the chapter that I selected was when President Obama presented Chancellor Merkel with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, actually back in a time when the Presidential Medal of Freedom actually meant something. So you can download that chapter free if you sign up for updates. And I'm very cognizant that people get way, way, way too much email. So I promise I don't spam people. I'm very careful about if you sign up for updates, you will not get email from me very often. So don't worry about that.
So please follow her, you guys. Claudia Clark Author 73 on Instagram. Please follow her so we can help get this book out. Please, please, please. And Mr. Somerfleck, what are you working on? What projects can we be of help?
Sure. Well, I'm a digital marketing specialist, and those are also my initials. And basically, my website is dms.blue. Very short, very simple. For anyone who wants objective and honest help with digital marketing, you may visit me online at dms.blue. You can go to YouTube and type in dms.blue, And I'm basically on every social media platform there is, pretty much. I'm not really into Instagram, sorry. But I'm on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm even in Google Books. If you just type in dms.blue, I will show up all over the place. And my book is called The Road to Digital Marketing Profits, now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million too, I believe. And you might even be able to order it from walmart.com.
Awesome. Awesome. So please follow Mr. Somerfleck on dms.blue on Twitter. Check out the website. You need digital marketing advice. He has 20 years experience in this thing, you guys. So please definitely reach out and check out what he has going so we can also support. So I want to thank everybody for your questions today. Kareem has a question before we wrap up. He said, Mr. Somerfleck, Twitter link earlier. What was it? What was it? What Twitter link? What do you know what topic we were talking about, Kareem?
Kareem, what are you talking about? I had a Twitter link.
I think you mentioned something about a Twitter that had to do with a
okay. Okay. Who do I follow on Twitter?
Oh, yes.
That may be what you mean, Kareem. There's a gentleman named Dr. Osterholm. I don't remember his first name. It might be John. I don't remember. But I follow Osterholm on Twitter. He also has a podcast called the Osterholm Update. And Dr. Scott Gottlieb, I think is his name. And he is Osterholm is spelled correctly, but it's one word.
Oh, one word. Okay.
Yes, he has a podcast called the Osterholm Update. Very sober, very serious guy, very balanced. He tries not to get one way or the other with politics. He tries to walk that line. Got Dr. Scott Gottlieb, I think, is the other gentleman. He was a former director of the FDA. And so I follow them on Twitter for objective information on what's going on with COVID. I also go to news.google.com, just type in COVID, and you'll find a whole lot of objective news sources. And I also go to refdesk.com and read through all the major headlines. And if I can I know I'm probably going over my time allotment here, but there's a wonderful, wonderful course on the greatcoursesplus.com called, man, I can't remember the whole name, but it's something about getting accurate information in an age of misinformation. And it's a great course. If you look it up on YouTube, Age of Misinformation, you might be able to find snippets of it from the Great Courses. It's wonderful information for people who are looking for really objective, honest news right now and feel like they just don't know where to turn. And as for me, I'm on Twitter. Just type in dms.blue and you'll find me all over the place.
That's awesome. And Kareem and everybody watching, the show is going to be up on Facebook and YouTube. So you can always come back to it to get the information. And I'm going to put it up on the podcast later tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for joining me every Wednesday whenever I bring a guest on to talk politics. This is informative for myself. I learn from my guests whenever they come on here. So I appreciate you guys also chiming in with your comments. And if you enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to leave a review, share with your friends. Follow our guests today on their social media and their websites. Make sure you follow them. And the News with Obi keeps running with any kind of donations that you have. If you click on the PayPal link, you'll be able to get to the donation page. Any donation is appreciated. And make sure you subscribe on all social media platforms as the News with Obi, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of that is the News with Obi. Thank you so much again, Ms. Claudia, and thank you, Mr. Somerfleck. Mr. Somerfleck, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And until next time, everybody, be well, be safe, wear your mask, and make sure you go out to vote. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.